Hi, this is Nora De Silva. Today's episode is about addiction. Addiction is a term not only used for people who use substances like heroin and cocaine. It is a term that used for people who cannot stop partaking in some activity like gambling, working, and eating. Today, I am honored to have with me Honorable Michael Tibollo, Ontario Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addiction. Together, we will go step by step to know more about addiction, what is addictions, causes, signs, and symptoms, and how to treat addiction. Hi, Honorable Michael Tibollo. How are you doing?
I'm good, Nora. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much for coming today and your willingness to share your wealth of information with us.
My pleasure to be here.
Okay. Would you please introduce yourself?
My name is Michael Tibollo, as you mentioned. I'm the Minister responsible for mental health and addictions for the province of Ontario. I've worked with people with addictions, what you described as, it's a wide term, addictions, but it includes not just substances, but processes. So there's people that are addicted to pornography, there are people that are addicted to, to workaholics, there are people that are addicted to social media, people that are addicted to gambling. There are a lot of other processes that have the same effect on a person as does a substance.
Okay. So what is addiction?
Well, addiction is really referred to the use of either a substance, so it could be alcohol, it could be tobacco, it could be a lot of the more complicated drugs like crack cocaine, methamphetamine, so many different types of other substances. But it can also, and that changes the way a person relates to the world. So being addicted to a substance that becomes a way of life for an individual because it changes the way they process information. But it could also be, as I said, someone who's addicted to social media or to gambling. It has the same implications where the mind is altered to require the substance or the process to keep the person feeling that sense of euphoria, that sense of dopamine rush that they get from doing activities that naturally give you that chemical in the brain.
Is addiction chronic?
It can be. We're seeing more and more people that are addicted. Now we talk about, statistics like 1 in 5 people have a mental health disorder in Canada. We talk about the level of addiction and some substances being extremely addictive, like fentanyl, Percocets, the opioid-based substances. It's chronic in people that are using, and there's really I don't know of any people that use casually. When you become addicted, you're addicted, and then you require more and more of that substance to be able to function every day.
Okay. Can we consider addiction as a disease?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest problems we've had. It's never been looked at as a disease. It's always been looked at as a social issue, a criminal activity. But we're discovering more and more that some people have a propensity towards an addiction because of genetics. Other people use it as a way of coping when they have issues that are either bad thoughts and how to deal and control that negative, the negative emotions. Other people use it to control behavior. So an addiction really happens as a result of there being an underlying mental health issue. That's pretty well in most cases. Rarely do you hear about someone being an occasional user because he or she is using to feel better. It is an illness, and when a person is using, the first time they use, they usually have that pleasure of using that drug. The second time they're using, what they're really doing is they're coping with the withdrawal symptoms that they're going to have that become overwhelming, and the person will use just because they need to use to stay alive.
Mm-hmm. How many types of addictions are there?
Oh, there's all kinds. I won't say there's hundreds, but if you think of any activity or any substance that you take more than you should, it really is an addiction. So
Even
if you go to
shopping.
even shopping, it's a process addiction. Ice cream, if you eat ice cream, huge amounts of ice cream, it becomes an addiction, because what it's doing is it's overriding the brain's ability to naturally produce dopamine. And what happens is, when the brain isn't producing it naturally, because you're gaining pleasure from doing something or using something, the brain stops producing it. And as the brain stops producing it, you still want to have that feeling of feeling good. So the association goes back to ice cream, and so all of a sudden you're eating more ice cream. But what I always ask is, why are you eating so much ice cream, or why is shopping an addiction? And usually you find out that there's an underlying mental health issue. You're coping with anxiety, you're coping with depression, you're coping with another issue, right? And you're using that substance or that process to self-medicate, to feel better about yourself and about the relationships or the people around you.
So then I wanted to ask the question, can someone with mental health issue be addictive? So the answer is yes?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. A mental health issue, if it's not treated, most people will try to find a way to treat it themselves if they don't get help. And so some will turn to cannabis, some will turn to drugs that are harder, and it depends also who they associate with. If they associate with people that are using oxycodone, or they're using another substance to deal with depression, and they start using it themselves because a friend gives them some to try, they become addicted to it. Or they'll start off by going to a doctor, and the doctor will prescribe it, saying this is a good way to manage this problem. But then if it's not managed properly, eventually it becomes an addiction.
What causes addiction?
Well, there's genetic reasons in some cases. A woman, so if a man and a woman side by side were to try cocaine, let's say, for the first time, chances are the man will use cocaine more before he becomes addicted, or a woman, perhaps on the first time she uses, will become addicted because of the physiology of the individuals. Another cause is, people that come from traumatic experiences. So if someone was abused as a child, there'd be a tendency that they would look to find a coping mechanism because they had a very bad experience as a child, so they didn't have the proper attachment to the parents. There are situations that we have a lot of intergenerational trauma. If you're indigenous and you think about colonialism and the implications of the residential schools, if you're black, you think about slavery and all the problems that existed there. You can go through many, many countries and many, many cultures, and you'll find that somewhere in their history there was some trauma that's implicated and carries on intergenerationally through different generations, because you never really forget it. So it's another cause of an addiction. Some people start because of pain management. We had a huge problem in the last few years with fentanyl. Fentanyl was put forward by drug companies as being non-addictive. So every doctor everywhere in North America was prescribing fentanyl like candy. And so a lot of people got addicted, and we're seeing it even today, that a lot of doctors are still prescribing fentanyl to manage pain. Last year 900 construction workers died of overdoses due to fentanyl. And these were people that had a house, a mortgage, a family, cars, payments to make, a good family life, but they have very difficult jobs in the construction industry. The doctors gave them fentanyl. The fentanyl made them feel really strong and good. And then the doctor said, okay, the pain is over because the injury that they may have had because of work. The injury is gone, no more fentanyl. And they started buying it on the street. And as a result of that, we've ended up with overdoses, 900 of them just in the construction industry last year.
Oh wow, big number, unfortunately. Okay, if someone has more than one addiction at the same time, like gambling, alcohol, which we see a lot, that this mix come together, and let's say taking drugs, is that situation treatable?
Absolutely. Most people use more than one substance. I just finished a study where most 9 out of the 10 people that I studied had used and abused at least 3 substances. A couple of them even had gambling disorders or gambling issues. But it's common that someone will start off with marijuana, the cannabis, they'll graduate and start using a little bit of cocaine, then they'll try crack cocaine, and if it's not caught, they'll move to even more difficult drugs to then cure, like fentanyl.
What are the effects of a drug on kids' life?
Well, unfortunately, we're seeing more and more younger people that are starting to use substances. It implicates, if the parents are using it at home and the kids see it, it normalizes an activity that is not good for them. And that becomes easy for them to then become addicted. If they themselves, as younger people, especially alcohol is a big issue. If they start off with some alcohol when they're younger, it really impacts on their development. And that's what my biggest concern is. When you have young people that are using substances that are going to impact on their development, then I have real concerns. We're seeing more and more cases now of schizophrenia than we've ever seen. And people say, well, why all of a sudden? Well, there's kids that are 12 and 14 that are smoking cannabis. And cannabis is a psychoactive. It's a drug. And what happens is when you use it before the brain is fully developed, so before the age of 24, it has implications to the development of the brain. And one of the implications is that many young people many of us have a gene that, if triggered, gives you schizophrenia. And so a lot of these younger people are smoking cannabis thinking it's not going to have an impact on them. And then it ends up that they end up becoming paranoid, they end up getting schizophrenia, they end up having really complicated issues that can never be resolved again. They're going to have them the rest of their lives.
Does addiction lead to mental illness?
It can definitely lead to mental illness. What typically happens, though, it's the other way, that the person will have anxiety or depression, and then they'll look for a way to self-medicate. But we do have situations that people start with an addiction because they want to use because of peer pressure or because of seeing that it's being used in the house, for instance, by the parents, alcohol, and some of the other substances, cannabis, and the use of cannabis. And so they'll try it. And then that brings on other issues, because the more a person uses, the less the body naturally produces the dopamine and the serotonin, the feel-good chemicals, and you start to rely on substances to produce those in the body. And so it can lead to an addiction because the person, their brain is adapting to the fact that it's going to need that substance to feel better.
So when we have to see a care health provider, in which stage of addiction?
Well, if an addiction is identified, you should immediately see either your doctor or one of the community-based supports that are out there. The big concern is to get to someone early. The earlier you can get support, the earlier you can get help, the more likely you are to succeed. The longer you go, the harder it becomes, only because the brain starts to adapt more and more. And then to rewire the brain, to get the brain to start functioning normally again, it becomes that much more complicated.
Okay. What are common signs and symptoms of a drug addiction?
Well, the ones that I always look at, or I spot very quickly, are when a person can't concentrate, when they are doing things that are not normal, like when the routines aren't there. When they're sleeping in late, when there are bursts of anger or different types of emotions that are not normal for the individual. These are signs that there's something more going on. It may not be an addiction, it could be a mental health issue, but the two of them are very much related. So it's important to see that. You start seeing that the person's spending a lot of money, but they've got nothing to show for it. You see that they're late and not punctual anymore. Not eating is another issue, because when the brain, when someone starts using, the executive function of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain, isn't working anymore. So you start to see that the person's habits change. They become, because they're using their limbic brain, they're using the animalistic, the reptilian brain, and that part of the brain is survival. So at that point, there's no consistency anymore. They're not working, they don't want to work, they don't want to, and they start becoming very aggressive and very individualistic, egocentric. So you start to see those types of character changes in the person. You start to notice that they withdraw from society. They're not as engaged and active with other people.
Yeah.
They keep to themselves more. These are all signs that if you start seeing a combination of them, then you've got to have a conversation with the person. You have to confront them. You have to ask them, are you having problems? What are the issues that you're facing? How can I help you? And then you have to enlist the appropriate supports to make sure that you get the help that the person needs so that they have the ability to get better, because it is an illness.
What are some effective treatment for drug addiction?
Well, drug addiction is, again, it's a complicated illness, because the first thing is the person has to acknowledge they have the problem. And then what they have to do is they have to go into a withdrawal management program. One of the things that you're not going to be successful with a drug addict if you don't get that person into a withdrawal management. So withdrawal management, we call it a detox. The person needs to go in, they have to stay off of every substance for 3 to 5 days at a minimum. In some cases, for alcohol, it's even longer. Once they've been detoxed, then they have to go into a treatment program. And we have all kinds of treatment programs in the province of Ontario. We have them for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, a year, 2 years. The best programs are the longer ones, especially when someone has been addicted for a long period of time. They need a long period of time to heal. And that healing process is understanding what the addiction is, and then understanding the underlying concurrent disorders and finding a way to resolve those issues in a safe environment. And so the key for us when we put someone into a program is to provide them a low barrier access point to get into the program. And when they get into the program, give them the opportunity to learn about themselves, to understand why they got the addiction, what the underlying mental health issues are. So by doing that and giving that person the opportunity, they start to heal. Then they need time to learn the new behaviors, to deal with the negative thoughts so that they have more of a positive outlook on things. You have to instill hope in the individual. Without hope, there's no recovery. And by doing that, then you have to provide the person supports through the program and going back into the community. But while all that is going on, you have to look after the family too, because in a lot of cases, the addiction was caused by the family, by the lack of the family involvement with the individual. So you need to create the new environment, the positive environment, so that the person has the greatest chance of staying substance free. And so that's the key to success, is to build that continuum, to have all those different components, and then helping the person afterwards. Aftercare is just as important as the treatment is. It's an illness, it can be managed, but you can never get away from it completely.
I have interviewed a person, he is from the Middle East, and he started to go on cocaine. He left his country. He was from Lebanon, and because of all this bad situation that happened in the country, killing and all these bad scenes that he have seen, he went to UK and he started to work, and just by a coincidence somebody has offered cocaine to him to try. And then he started his journey with cocaine. For 2 years, his life has been turned upside down, and he was every single day intake cocaine for 12 hours. Then he said, these 2 years have changed my life completely. His health has been affected. He has been dismissed from his job. He was doing very well. He had he made good income, and then he lost it on spending, because it is expensive as well. And his all over health has been damaged as well. Until now, when he talks about this incident and he feels bad. He says when he used to do like for 12 hours and take the cocaine, after he stops and the effectiveness of the medicine goes from his body, he feels so bad, he feels scared, he feels insecure, he feels like, what did I do? It is all the bad consequences that comes from one trial.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to advise, especially the kids, although it is bad for any age, but the kids, what do you advise them?
Well, the only thing I can say is that nothing in this world is free. And there are consequences to the things that you do. A lot of times, you know, especially young people, they think they're invincible. Substances have killed many, many people a lot smarter and a lot in much better mental and physical shape than me. And I am terrified of the thought of using substances. And I think young people need to understand that they're not invincible, and that there are consequences to their actions. You know, the future is in our hands, really, when you stop and think about, you know, all the opportunities we have, especially in a country like Canada. And to deny yourself all those opportunities for the sake of a short-term pleasure is really criminal, but the consequences are the rest of your life. So, you know, and that's without thinking about the negative things that if you can't afford to buy the drugs and you start stealing and you end up in jail.
Exactly.
Without the fact that you could end up dead because, you know, if you use and you drive a car and you get into an accident and you're killed, you know, the repercussions of ending up in the hospital or brain dead as a result of, you know, the use of a substance and the impact that it has on your brain. Why would anyone run the risk of losing those opportunities for a quick fix? So my words to anyone, young or old, there are consequences to all our actions. And we really need to think through the things we do and why we do them. Alcohol and drugs are not the solution. And this isn't even a question of saying moderation, because at the end of the day, using a substance that's going to alter your mind and make you sick for the rest of your life, it's not worth the chance, the risk of trying something like that.
And according to the statistics that has been made by the United Nations, 660,000 people died in 2023 for issues related to drugs.
I'm not surprised at those statistics. You know, unfortunately, many of us believe that the easy road is the best road. And I'm convinced that the best road is the one that's hardest to climb, because if you're going to climb that road and be successful, you will have learned things along the way that will help you the rest of your life be successful. Taking the easy road or taking the off-ramp from life, thinking that somehow that's going to give you a better success in the future, go to the cemetery and see how many people thought that are now, you know, no longer here. And it's unfortunate because a lot of times they're very young when they die, and we lose incredible opportunities because everyone is put on this planet with a purpose. Everyone has the ability to achieve pretty much anything they want. So denying themselves that possibility, denying their families, those their privileges, their blessings, and to not take them because you decided to take an off-ramp or take a day off from a complicated problem. There isn't a problem that can't be resolved. I say this all the time. God didn't create problems. The problems are created by man, and they can be solved by man. So what we need to do is find the solutions to our problems, not look for ways to get around the problems, because the problems will always be there. And we'll always have the faculties and the ability to fix them if we put our minds to fixing those problems.
Yeah, it is part of life to have challenges and problems. Without the problems, it is not life. It is just like, would say heaven. We need to go through those challenges to learn something, to be stronger, not to fix it in a proper way or wrong way.
The lessons we learn in life are the things that make us who we are as individuals. And so I always encourage, especially young people, when you have a problem, don't try to fix it yourself, and don't run away from that problem by using a substance. Fix the problem by confronting it and bringing in the people around you. If you can't fix it yourself, bring in the people around you to help you fix it. And there isn't a problem that can't be fixed. When I hear about youth suicide, when I hear about it, really disturbs me, because it means that they've lost hope. And when someone loses hope and thinks that the solution is to end one's life, or to use a substance to make life more meaningful or manageable, then we as a society have failed, because we should be teaching resiliency. We should be making sure that opportunities are there for young people, for old people, to feel that they're part of something bigger. The minute you become isolated and only think that there's no one else out there, that you're all alone and isolated, that's when we start seeing a lot of negative thoughts. And that, unfortunately, is what leads to some of these other issues that are so complex and difficult to deal with, but we need to address.
Can you give us a story that you cannot forget about a situation that you saw with addiction?
Well, probably the reason that people ask me sometimes, why did you become a politician? Because I was a lawyer before. I could travel anywhere I wanted to travel, whenever I wanted to travel. There was never a shortage or restriction on my life, and I became a politician. Now I have to be somewhere at a certain time. I have to be there till a certain time. I have to go to places that I don't necessarily want to go. I have limitations on when I can take holidays. I've got all these rules that have been put on me, and people say, well, why did you become a politician? You had the best of the best before, and now all of a sudden you have all these limitations on you. And the story that I always tell them is that I had two friends, one that was very, very dear to me, whose son had an addiction. And the son came to a program that I was running. He stayed for a short period of time, and then because of the way the rules were set up, he decided he wanted to leave. And I was against him leaving. I fought, and I remember the mother and father were there, they were crying, but he insisted that he wanted to leave the program, and he left. So I always knew that I would bring him back to the program sometime, because he just needed some time to understand that he hadn't gone as far as he had to go. So the story goes that the parents wouldn't let him back into the house because they started suspecting that he was using again. He was living in a motel on one of the highways in Vaughan. And one night he was high, he ran into the middle of the street, and he was run over and killed. Oh, wow. And the person who killed him kept driving, he left him there to die. Oh, my God. So I wouldn't do that to a dog, but this person did that. And so that really made me assess where I was. I was successful being a lawyer, I had everything I wanted, but I realized that if I didn't do something to help people who need help by helping change the system would never change. And how many more parents would lose their kids because the government didn't know what needed to be done. And so I decided that, take my experiences in the world that I came from, get to government and start looking for ways of changing the system to help those that are most vulnerable. And that's why I'm here.
That was a great reason to shift your life to help as much as possible. Kids, adults, and everyone in the society, everyone deserves the best service, the best understanding, and the best resources to keep our community more healthy, more secure, and to give them more understanding about life and facts in life. Thank you so much one more time, Honorable Michael, and it was a pleasure talking to you and getting all this great information from you with your vast experience in this field.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for doing this and trying to help as many people as possible. I think the more we talk about it, the better chance we have of saving people's lives. So God bless you too. Thank you.
God bless you too. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, my audience. I hope this episode will change lots of people's life. Please, please, addiction is not a solution for anything. Please, it will worsen your situation, and there are lots of other solutions to your challenges and difficulties in life, knowing that everyone has challenges through his life, and this is not the solution. Thank you so much one more time. Watch us for more episode. That was Nora De Silva. Thank you.